So, who the heck am I and why am I qualified to be telling you about any of this? Well, my name is Renee, and I am a registered dietitian, but specifically a longevity dietitian. I got my master's degree in health span and longevity. So, looking at ways that individuals can not just live longer, but live healthier longer. And going way deep into the biochemistry, all the way into practical ways that we can achieve this in our day to day. I am also the director of education at El Nutra, who are the makers and creators of Prolon, which is the one and only fasting mimicking diet available today that you can purchase. So we'll go over all of that. But to really kick things off, I like to remind people why we even are talking about fasting in the first place. And I think in today's world where fasting has really started to become a little bit trendy, and there's certainly a lot more information and science available, people sometimes fall back to suggest that maybe it's just a fad and maybe there's not really a lot of evidence here and it's too new for us to really know what's going on. But I like to remind people that fasting has been part of our human evolution since our very early days, millions and millions of years ago. It is practiced by 5 of our major religions, if not more. And it is really something that our bodies have evolved to thrive within. And so if you think back to when our ancestors were looking and looking for food at all times, they didn't have food readily available like we do today. And so our body had to learn to thrive during these periods of fasting and actually learn to have evolutionary advantages when we fasted. And so there's a lot of things that go on in our bodies when we fast that our bodies have learned to do. And that's really what we're tapping into. And there are a lot of things that our bodies do when we go into a fasted state, and it is holistic in the ways that it is impacting us. So it's not just weight loss or maybe a cellular cleanup. It includes our skin, it includes our kidneys, it includes our liver, it includes our blood sugar. So we're going to try and just cover some of the major ones today, but I'm barely scratching the surface because when we work at the root cause, which is at our cellular level, we can do a lot of really great work. And that's what fasting is letting us do. So this word autophagy, you may or may not have heard it, but I really want to spend some time here because if you haven't heard about it, you should. This concept of autophagy is essentially that our body is able to have a nice spring cleaning at the cellular level. I like to think of autophagy as a vacuum cleaner for our cells or an internal doctor for our cells. And what autophagy is our body's own ability to go in and clean itself out from the inside. Now, over time, as we age, we accumulate more and more junk in our cells. Just like we do at home, our junk drawers start filling up and filling up and filling up over time. Eventually, it just starts to be a mess and you can't find anything in there. And unfortunately for our cells, the same thing can happen there. We start getting misfolded proteins and cellular components that just don't work as well as they do. And that can persist into a lot of other problems and trouble across our body and across all of our systems. So it's really important that we take this time to do this spring cleaning. And that is what autophagy is. Now, autophagy doesn't just turn on very easily. Unfortunately, it does require a little bit of work and a very specific signal and trigger from our body to turn this on. And it turns out that you actually have to fast for at least 3 days to turn on autophagy and to turn on this deep cellular cleanup. And so that's why when we talk about fasting, we like to break it up into different types of fasting. There is intermittent fasting, and this is the stuff that we hear more often. This is where people are suggesting that you would fast for 16 hours or 14 hours a day. And that certainly has some benefits, especially if we're talking about weight loss or things like that. You can certainly see benefits with intermittent fasting there. But if we want to get all of those benefits plus that deep cellular cleanup that allows for a lot more benefits and full system benefits, we need to fast for over 2 days, so over 48 hours, which takes us into the 3-day territory. Now, I think a lot of people, when they hear that, get a little bit disappointed because they think, no way am I going to fast for 3 days. No way are you convincing me to even fast for 24 hours. And that is very understandable. And that is why the fasting mimicking diet came to be. And I will tell you in a moment all of the research that went behind this, but the purpose of it and the reason why all of this time and energy was spent into figuring out how we could fast with food was because we wanted to make it not just easier, but also safer, and to make sure that we were providing nourishment and protecting our organs and, most importantly, our muscle. Because if we do this with water only, we run the risk of tapping into our muscle. So again, I will talk a little bit more about what the heck we're doing here with fasting mimicking, but fasting mimicking is essentially the concept that you can get all the wonderful benefits of water only fasting, but with food. And it is done with very specific food. So the amount of time and energy that went into figuring out which foods were included was 30 years of R&D and research and development, over nearly $50 million in government grants. And we also see about 100 patents now today and over 40 clinical trials. So figuring out how to get the right foods every single day that live under the radar of your body so that your body still thinks that you're fasting was no small feat. So before I go into looking into some of the research, I want to see if anybody has any questions about just generally the concept of fasting mimicking and fasting with food. Does anybody care to know how, the science behind living under those radars? It can get a little technical, which is why I usually leave it out. But just in case anybody's curious, I'm open to answering any questions here.
Renee, why is it for 5 days?
Great question. So if we go back here to this concept of autophagy, and we mentioned that it takes about 48 hours to really trigger this. So then that means that we want to get to day 3. We want to fast for at least 3 days. Now, if you start doing and you're motivated to do that spring cleanup on day 3, then that's great. But you want to actually get into it and really get that full cleanup capacity. If you just start, you might clean out one drawer, but you're not getting your full house. You need to get and do this spring cleaning for at least a few days to get those benefits. And the same concept applies here. We want to let our body live in this state of cleanup and do some good amount of work over a few days so that we get all of those benefits, especially if it's going to take us 2 to 3 days to actually trigger this. We don't want to have to do this too often. And in fact, what we'll see soon enough in the research is that we really only want to do this about 3 times a year. So if we're only doing this 3 times a year, we want to get our money's worth, and we want to get all of that hard work applying a lot of that energy. So that's why we do it for 5 days. We want to activate the autophagy, and then we want to live in it. Great question. Okay, so why would we do this? What are the benefits of doing this? Well, we've been able to show autophagy. I've talked about that plenty enough, but just worth showing that this is pretty hard to achieve and very hard to measure. And we've measured this with Prolon, and we can show that we did, in fact, trigger autophagy starting on days 3 and 4, and even continuing. This is actually day 7. So pretty incredible stuff that you can see that in the early days or even before you start, nothing's really going on, just baseline. And then it really skyrockets around that day 3 and 4. Another reason that people are doing fasting mimicking is for biological age. Now, what the heck is biological age? It is the age that our body behaves. It is the age of our cells. And it turns out that our chronological age, or the age on our birth certificate, for example, doesn't necessarily have to be the age that our body behaves. In fact, we can be older than our chronological age, or that number on our birth certificate, or we can be younger than our chronological age. And so certainly we all want to be younger than our chronological age, and that will set us up for a lot of success in healthy aging. And so we measured this with cycles of Prolon, and we said, okay, let's see what happens if you do 5 days of this program once a month for 3 months in a row, we were able to show a 2.5-year biological age improvement. So that is a grand total of 15 days of intervention over a 3-month period, and you get 2.5 years off of your biological age. This is really unheard of in the world of healthy aging, to get that kind of a result that quickly. And this again just shows to the power of fasting. And then when we talk about how we want to continue to do this, we then said, okay, let's see what happens if you were to do this 3 times a year for 20 years. Do you still get additional benefits? And you do. We showed an 11-year biological age reversal if you were to do this 3 times a year over a period of 20 years. So it continues to compound. Not only do we see improvements in biological age, but we also see improvement in our oh, sorry, I'm just going to put somebody on mute here.
All right. Mm.
Okay, we're all set. And so we also see improvements in your likelihood of getting various chronic conditions. And so these are the ones that are the most prevalent today in the United States. So we're looking at things like heart disease, cancer, cerebrovascular disease, or like like things like Alzheimer's, et cetera, and then diabetes risk. And so all of those are impacted again by this program. We were able to show a reduction in risk of developing these things anywhere from 6 to 25%. And that is even in healthy individuals. Now, let's say you were not a healthy individual when you started using the fasting mimicking program. Then you saw anywhere from 10 to 32% risk reduction, because you're tapping into those risks and you are supporting in the reversal of a large number of the biomarkers that put you at risk for these conditions. So pretty impactful in terms of prevention as well. And that's something that we really always want to remember. You don't want to wait until it happens. You want to get ahead of it. Now, a lot of the reason why people do Prolon and do fasting mimicking is going to be weight loss. And that makes plenty of sense because there's some pretty great research on weight loss with fasting mimicking. We see, not only do you see significant weight loss, but you see the right kind of weight loss. What is the right kind of weight loss? Well, we want to make sure that it is fat that you are losing and not muscle that you are losing. And with the fasting mimicking diet, we consistently see that the muscle is being protected and that fat is being tapped into. And not just any fat, we see it especially in the trunk fat region. What is the trunk fat region? It is your belly fat especially. We also see that it is tapping into things like visceral fat and hepatic fat. Visceral fat is the fat that is close to your organs. This is the most dangerous kind of fat. We also see hepatic fat, which is liver fat. Unfortunately, in today's society, we have a prevalence and an epidemic of liver fat being elevated. And so this is another area that we see really impactful results for that weight loss. So again, it's not just losing weight, it's losing the right kind of weight. And in a lot of research, we're seeing that this is really tough to do with most diets. And even some of the best diets out there, like the Mediterranean diet. We love it. By the way, I am not dissing the Mediterranean diet. We're big proponents of the Mediterranean diet. But with any diet, especially when you're reducing your calories, it is really important to be very careful about what calories you're reducing and how you're reducing those. And with the Mediterranean diet, followed every single day for 120 days, we showed really great results in terms of heart health metrics and weight loss, but we did see very significant amount of that weight loss coming from muscle. That same the same groups that were in the same study who did the fasting mimicking diet instead, where they did it only once a month for 4 months, saw the same amount of weight loss, saw the same results on heart health metrics, but you see no muscle loss. And so this is really important. This muscle protection component where you get the weight loss, but you protect your muscle is incredible, especially in today's world where we hear a lot about the Ozempics, the GLP-1s, where muscle is being tapped into, and we have to be so careful about how we are eating to protect our muscle. This is just such an incredible tool. Now, Another fun one that I like to bring up is that when we work at a cellular level, our cells make up our whole system, including our skin. And so when we are able to clean our cells, we can see some dermatology benefits. We did a study where we looked at skin before and after even just 5 days. And we showed improvements in skin texture, reduction in fine lines, and improvements in skin hydration. So pretty incredible, again, what happens when we work at the root cause. Now, all of the things that I just shared are pretty incredible physical benefits. And I always like to remind people that it's more than the physical. It's also the emotional benefits and the motivational benefits that you get from this. Once you've completed, we hear so often and so often in the 89 percentile range that people are more motivated to adopt other healthy changes after they've completed it. And this is probably because they feel more energized. They're more mindful of what they eat. They have less food cravings and less sugar cravings. And this happens again right after you've completed those 5 days. So on day 6, you'll see many people just have a completely different opinion of a lot of the foods in their fridge that they might have, had a hankering for before and that they don't so much anymore. So we were able to study this also in patients with type 2 diabetes that followed these programs. They did the fasting mimicking diet once a month for 6 months. And these people showed that they had 6 hours of physical activity increased over when they started. So they were working out 6 hours more after they completed this fasting mimicking program than before. But the control group, the people that had been given regular diet, and again, they still saw some pretty good improvements, but they decreased their physical activity by 4 hours a week, which is pretty interesting. And what we like to remind people of when we see this difference in the amount of exercise, which we don't tell people in these studies that you need to go exercise. We just tell them, do the fasting mimicking diet or do this regular healthy diet. And then we just measure physical activity because we want to see what happens. We want to make sure that they're still being relatively healthy. And what we believe is happening here is this combination of motivation and feeling of pride that you feel when you've completed the fasting mimicking diet, plus the protection of muscle, which makes you feel strong and energized. So those things combined certainly propel you to make other lifestyle changes, including exercise. So it's pretty cool stuff. Now, for many of us, we're getting ready and gearing up to do this fast with the team and with Sarah. So I wanted to also give you guys a little bit of a peek into what you can expect with this program. And so it's 5 days. The first day is pretty easy. The first day for most people is really just about changing your mind about going to the fridge and picking out whatever you want and going to your Prolon box and your Prolon kit and taking out what's in that day's box and making that. So there's about 1,100 calories on this day. So for most people, that's not a huge shift from what they're typically eating. And most people find that day one's pretty easy, just about transitioning into this fasted state. Day 2, this is when our body starts burning fat for fuel. So our body really likes to burn sugar for fuel, and it usually has it because in the way that we eat in today's world, we pretty much always have food and have glucose in some form that our body can use that. But once we get to day 2 of our fast, our body starts to shift and it has to use fat for fuel. This is really good for our metabolic health. So if your doctor has been looking at your labs and they see high blood pressure, high cholesterol, things like that, this is going to start tapping in and helping out here. It also is, of course, beneficial for weight loss. So this is when this starts, but this is going to, now that it's started, it's going to continue and possibly even increase throughout the remaining 5 days. Day 3, this is where that deep cellular cleanup known as autophagy kicks in. So that is going to start here and then again continue through the rest of it. Days 2 or 3 are usually the toughest day for most people because on day 2, we drop the calories a little bit, but it's okay. You will typically find that it is pretty easy to push through. You usually just have like maybe like 30 minutes of maybe a headache or something like that, it should be very mild. And if anything, like an Advil or a Tylenol can help push through that. But otherwise, on day 4 and 5, this is where something called keto euphoria usually kicks in. And euphoria, I think, is a perfect term for it, because usually what you start feeling, especially on day 5 and definitely on day 6, is this sense of heightened awareness. You have, things are brighter, things are clearer, you can smell things better. And it's just because your whole body is, one, of course, starting to clean up and detoxify at this point, but also because your body is burning that fat for fuel. And that fat for fuel presents as something called ketones that your brain really likes to use as energy. So your brain is really working at really high efficiency, and therefore there's a lot of really cool senses that you'll feel throughout this program. Okay, so I want to skip through here. I'm just going to breeze through these last little slides here, just about some common questions that happen during your fast as you guys gear up to complete this. So before you start, the good news is you don't have to really do anything. This whole program was designed to just dive right on in. But if you want to make it a little bit easier, we do recommend to avoid excess sugar and refined carbohydrates and alcohol on the day before. Try and reduce portions and fight the urge to have this like late night big meal. Some people feel like they have to do that the day before, but I ask that you resist that urge on that day. It'll make it actually easier come day 1. Caffeine, you can have up to 140 milligrams a day. We recommend, if you can, to exclude it entirely. But if you really need that cup of coffee, no worries. Just make sure that you have under 140 milligrams and that you have it black. Don't add anything to it. Definitely no sugar, milk, creamer, etc. Exercise, keep it light. If you are sweating, you've probably gone too far. So we recommend light walking, yoga, stretching, things like that. But definitely include that day to day. It'll help you with the detoxification and the flushing that is going on through this program. Medications, stay on your medications. Do not exclude them, but your supplements, if you can exclude them, if they're not medically necessary, we recommend to exclude those. On day 2, starting on day 2, all the way through day 5, you're going to get something called the L drink, which I don't have here right now, but it is just a little beverage that has little tick marks along the side that will be based off of your weight. And so the more you weigh, the more you'll add, and you add that in daily to help support muscle protection, also hydration and energy. Your body will use this beverage as a source of energy. It usually, when you're not in a fasted state, will just flush it out. It won't use it at all. But when we're in a fasted state, it does. And so this is really helpful to help protect that muscle. So don't skip it. And I do recommend, it has a bit of a flavor to it. I like to mix it with my hibiscus tea and make a hibiscus tea with L drink beverage, and you just sip it throughout the day. So I have 2 drinks going at any time. I have my L drink that I just sip throughout the day, and then I have another drink that I more quickly replenish. Make sure to have everything in your day's box. Do not switch items between the box. It is very carefully designed to keep you in a fasted state. So just make sure that you do not switch between days. You get a daily menu card every single day that tells you exactly what to have each day. And it does make recommendations on when you can have it in the day. Note that you can move things around within the day. You just can't move things around between days. That is an important distinction. So if you decide that you want to have your soup for breakfast, go for it. If you want to save your L bar for before bed, go for it. But make sure that you are only having what's in that given day's box within that day. So very important distinction. That's really it there. Drink lots of water. We already talked about light exercise, staying busy. Don't think that because you're fasting, you should cancel all your plans. I would, in fact, say the opposite. Make sure that you have lots going on, stay busy, keep working. All of those things will help you stay distracted, because it's really easy when we're fasting to just immediately think about food, even though we have food throughout this whole program, and it makes it light years easier. We still, you're still going to be a little bit hungry. And so staying busy will definitely help with that. Get some sleep. And if you do feel any of those symptoms like the headaches or maybe some muscle aches or things like that, don't worry, you can take Advil, Tylenol, or some of those over-the-counter solutions too. You can add in just a very few things. Generally, we say stick to the box. Do not add anything other than water. You get your supplements, you get your teas, you get breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. So you have everything you need in this box, right? But if you need to add some seasonings, you can add up to 1 teaspoon of dried herbs or spices per day. So that's 1 teaspoon of dried herbs or spices each day that you can add. You can also add 1 teaspoon of salt each day. I generally say limit the salt unless you start noticing that you have muscle aches or pains. Then do a teaspoon of salt in water and have that. And a lot of people find that that really helps. You might just be low on electrolytes. We have plenty of electrolytes in the food, in the kit, and in all of the supplementation that is there. But some people still, it's still a bit of a difference from what they're used to. And so that teaspoon of salt can be helpful there. And then I think the one thing that I just want to note here is that if you want to exclude anything from the box, some people find that they're just not hungry, which I'm always surprised by. And they say, I'm okay. I don't need this XYZ item in my box. If you can have it, if you can enjoy it and have it, then please do, because everything is there and designed to, again, help protect for safety and muscle protection and all of the additional benefits of having nutrients with our fast. But if you really can't do it, then you can exclude it. So excluding is certainly better than adding. But if you are going to add, there's only 3 items, and you can only pick one of them per day that you can add. And that is 2 thin slices of apple, 1 stalk of celery, or 1 small Persian cucumber. I do hear consistently that the thin slices of apple are especially helpful if you really need them. So before you get started, maybe keep a couple apples on hand just in case you want to go ahead and take advantage of this to just help you push through. But again, I'll say it. I said it before and I'll say it again. When in doubt, live in the box. Do not add anything. Even if you don't think it's going to kick you out of your fast, make sure that you continue to stay within box. Okay, after your fast, it's super simple. I'll make sure that Sarah gets a transition day guide. It gives you all guidance, but it's pretty straightforward. Don't go crazy. Take it from me. I've done this 14 times, and one time I had a burger. I thought, that's really what I feel like having. I want to have a burger. And I will regret it still to this day. It was super painful. It was not fun. Not worth it. So wait 24 hours after your fast. The 24 hours after your fast, take it easy. Transition back to regular solid foods. Avoid alcohol, saturated fats, a bunch of sugar, things like that. You probably won't crave those things. Like I said, I only did it one time, and it was pretty late in my rounds of fasting, because usually you'd be surprised. You crave smoothies, you crave salads, you crave all these clean, healthy things. But try and stick to that at least on the first day, and save some indulgence for the day after, once your body's gotten a little bit more used to transitioning back to regular food. And then last but not least, I just want to mention the long-term protocol, which is you're doing this once a month for 3 months in a row. Everybody who has never fasted before, this is the starting point. But the good news is that after that, you just do it once every 3 to 4 months. And so moving forward, you're just doing 1 box every 3 to 4 months. That's 3 times a year. And that is just going to keep you maintained, and it's going to help support, again, the maintenance of the results, but also the increase in biological age reduction. So really, really great to just stay on board and keep that maintenance.